What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And what is going on in the New York Giants quarterback room? We're hearing some things. Of course, we know that the New York Giants have said they expect Daniel Jones to be their starting quarterback for the 2024 season. Daniel Jones is rehabbing quite well. He was doing some on-field workouts with the Giants this week, which is a good sign for his health and status for the upcoming season. Very likely ready for the start of training camp and also very likely ready for the start of the regular season. So, will Daniel Jones be QB1 or will QB2 Drew Lock nip at his heels and maybe push ahead of him sometime this upcoming season? That's what we want to kind of discuss in this episode because we're starting to hear some rumors here and there. Mike Garafolo of NFL Network mentioned it. We know that the Seattle Seahawks GM earlier in the offseason mentioned it. Drew Lock is seemingly coming in here with the expectation that he has a chance to compete for the starting job throughout the summer. So we want to dive into that. What does that mean for this team? Do we think that Drew Lock has a chance of taking the starting job? And all the other stuff in between that. But before we dive into all of it, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling about the Giants potentially having a position battle at quarterback between Daniel Jones and Drew Lock this summer?
I did not find myself here talking about this after the draft. This was like, if you told me this was what we were going to be talking about a week ago, I would have been like, yeah, that sounds like hell. Can confirm it feels like hell because you just paid Daniel Jones over $40 million per season. I'm going to try to keep it light, by the way, on ragging on DJ on this episode because I do tend to get very emotional about it, but I do want to be very practical about it as well, in the sense that let's look at the actual logic and the actual realistic scenario unfolding before us right now. Daniel Jones has not lived up to the contract. Why? Well, bad offensive line play, no receivers, and he got injured. So we can safely say that, yes, he's been given a bad, situation to kind of work with, but he also hasn't done anything to help himself. The injuries, the throws that he does have in the pocket was clean. He missed. He was horrible throwing the ball downfield last year when he was healthy. So, I do kind of feel as though right now there's a lot for DJ to prove. Now, a lot of people out there, there is and I feel like this is kind of a renaissance for the DJ supporters in the sense that now a lot of people are saying, well, the offensive line is getting better, hopefully. And we have a number one receiver in Malik Neighbors. A lot of the renaissance guys are saying, well, DJ's never had a WR1. DJ's never had an offensive line. Well, I would argue that we're going into year 6. The damage has already been done. This is not a second or third year Daniel Jones where we're like, oh, finally we got him some weapons. This is a player coming off an ACL tear who has developed a number of like catastrophic habits, like throwing off your back foot, like making dumb decisions, throwing pick sixes. The one that comes, Tariq Woolen's pick six against the Seattle stands out. Stephon Gilmore interception in week 1 when he threw it directly to him, trying to keep the ball in play for no reason, just throw the ball away. He continuously makes bad mistakes that good quarterbacks do not make. There are a lot of mental lapses that are not impacted by poor offensive line or wide receiver play. They're just him making bad decisions. Not to mention, he does not read the field well. So, all these different variables, look, this is not entirely his fault in one respective way. The Giants have done him absolutely zero favors, right? No wide receivers, no offensive line, coaching turnovers left and right. He's gone through 4 offensive coordinators, 3 head coaches. This is not the situation you want for a quarterback you're trying to develop, and it never was. It's really unfortunate that he was doomed to this reality, but here we are, and we have to take what we've got. We have to take the situation as face value and run with it. And the truth is that he's coming off an ACL tear, and I have no reason to believe that Drew Lock cannot compete for the starting job. Now, Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com came out and said, well, I'm hearing that they're planning for Drew Lock to compete. One of them has a $41.6 million cap hit. Sorry, this year's $47 million for Daniel Jones, and the other one has a $5 million cap hit. That should tell you if this is true. And I think that if you're a Daniel Jones supporter, and we don't know this for a fact yet, but if the Giants go into training camp and have an open position battle at quarterback, this should tell you everything you need to know. Not to mention, they just tried to replace him in the draft. They literally, a year after giving him a big contract, they just tried to acquire a quarterback in Drake May in the draft. Is that not enough to tell you that they wanted to move on from him? Is that not enough to tell you that they don't trust him, that they don't feel confident with him playing, especially? And we're going to talk about the injury clause in his contract. I'll break that down for you guys to have an extra layer here. Drew Lock is not a good player. And that is really sucks to be in a position like this if you're a Giants fan, knowing that the Giants do not trust Daniel Jones based on the actions that they presented. I know they say we expect him to be the starter in week 1, but everything that they've done has suggested the exact opposite. They tried to replace him in the draft. They brought in someone to apparently compete with him. And, they're obviously another big red flag for me, Anthony. They didn't restructure his contract. If the Giants wanted to move on from Daniel Jones, the best thing they could have done is not restructure his contract, and they haven't. They restructured Andrew Thomas's, they restructured Dexter Lawrence, but they have not even touched. Usually, your quarterback, if you have faith in them, is the first player you're restructuring their contract. Jalen Hurts has like 6 void years. They restructured his contract over and over and over to keep giving money to other players. That's the first place you go if you want to restructure your contract, because your franchise quarterback is supposed to be the guy that's leading you into the future. The fact that they haven't even touched that contract should be the biggest red flag of all. That should be the biggest variable to look at when you're thinking, do the Giants trust him? It's so obvious they don't. Now, is it impossible that he bounces back and has a good season? Of course not. He could totally have a decent season, but he has to be great for me for him to convince me that we should keep him at over $40 million against the cap next year. He's got to be excellent. It is extremely unlikely that he's going to be excellent. It's extremely unlikely he's even going to be good, let alone excellent. So, Anthony, when you're looking at the situation, do you think there's going to be a position battle? A lot of people think if he's healthy, he's starting. I tend to think like that's probably the safest logic to go with. But I wouldn't be surprised if Drew Lock had a chance to start week 1 because of the injury. They want to bring DJ along slowly. They want to give Drew Lock a chance to compete, see what he's got in the tank. Is there a world where you could see Drew Lock beating him out for the starting job?
Honestly, no. I don't think that Drew Lock will be starting week 1 for this team. I think that the New York Giants have way too much money invested into Daniel Jones, and he will be healthy for the start of the regular season. And if he's healthy, he's going to be the starter. I do think there's a world where Drew Lock takes over as the starter during the regular season. I just don't think that he opens the year as the starter. I know that we kind of discussed this, Alex, and you mentioned how maybe if Daniel Jones is a little bit still banged up and not 100%, Drew Lock starts the first couple of weeks, and then they reevaluate with Daniel Jones. If Drew Lock is playing really well, he keeps the job. That's very unlikely in and of its own right. But I'll just say I think that Daniel Jones will be the week 1 starter, and it's just going to be up to him to keep that starting job. He's going to have the starting job. Can he play well enough to keep Drew Lock off his heels and maintain his status as the starter for the 2024 season? That's the big question mark, because if Daniel Jones struggles really badly. I mean, guys, we are talking about a guy who started 6 games and threw 6 interceptions with only 2 touchdowns. He was averaging a pick per game. He wasn't averaging a touchdown per game. In the NFL, if you're not averaging 2 touchdowns per game as a quarterback, you're bad. He wasn't even averaging 1 touchdown per game as a starting quarterback for the Giants. And yes, I understand receiving core had its issues. Injuries to Darren Waller. Offensive line stunk to high heaven. I know. All of those things are true. But even still, he didn't even average 1 touchdown per game this past season in the 6 starts that he had. That is a major red flag for Daniel Jones. He needs to play better this upcoming season. And if he isn't playing well, even if the offensive line is terrible, even if the receivers are creating 0 separation by all advanced analytics, whatever stats you want to throw that way to give Daniel Jones some excuses, if he is not statistically performing at a high level, the Giants have no choice but to see what else they have on their roster. Drew Lock will get playing time during the regular season if Daniel Jones is not putting up numbers and winning football games. If the Giants are 0-6, 6 weeks into the middle of the season, Daniel Jones is out of the lineup and he's done. He's no longer a New York Giant anymore. You could pretty much write the end of the chapter in his career with the Giants. If the Giants are even 2-4 and Jones only has 5 touchdowns 6 weeks into the season, done. You take him out of the lineup, you give him a short leash for the season, and you pull him at the first sign of him proving not to be the future at the quarterback position. He is on his last leg here. He is given his final opportunity to be the Giants starting quarterback and to prove that he could be their quarterback long term. If he doesn't rise to the occasion and he doesn't play well through the first 2 months of the season, it's over. You got to cut your losses and move on. The contract suggests that. Alex, you're 100% right. The Giants' decision not to restructure his contract screams that the New York Giants are not committed to him long term. He is now on a year-by-year basis. Daniel Jones has to prove that he is much better than what people expect him to be this upcoming season. And if he doesn't prove that, then you can expect them to move on. I do think Drew Lock has a chance to start for this team. But again, Alex, I don't think it's in week one. I think that the Giants added this talent to the offense, to the offensive line, to the receiving core to say, hey, Daniel, we're giving you everything you need. Go out there week one. It's your starting job. Don't lose it. But know that you could lose it if you don't play well enough. And then ultimately, I think that he's going to try his best to keep that starting job. But if he doesn't play well, you will see Drew Lock at some point in the season. And hey, if Drew Lock doesn't play well, hell, you might see another Tommy DeVito Linsanity run towards the end of the year as well. That's totally possible. We could see more Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets on the field at some point this year. That is the dire state of the New York Giants quarterback room. They are devoid of talent right now. They do not have an established starter that we know is going to play well for all 17 games. And the other factor here to consider, Alex, Daniel Jones has missed time with injuries in all but one of his professional seasons. If you go back to his rookie year, he had a concussion at some point, missed a couple games. Go back to his second year, he missed some time. 2021, he missed the entire final 6 weeks of the season with a neck injury. 2022, he stayed perfectly healthy. The New York Giants made the playoffs, won a playoff game, and we all know last season, bunch of injuries piled up for Daniel Jones. He had another season-ending surgery. So going into 2024, Alex, if you want to play the probability game and look at his career history, it is very likely Daniel Jones misses at least some time with injury during the 2024 season. When that happens, if he does get pulled from the lineup due to an injury, how well Drew Lock plays might determine the future of Daniel Jones. Because even if Jones is out of the lineup for, let's say, 1 week, but his performance has been a little bit middling so far. Let's call it week 8. Jones has, an average amount of touchdowns, an average amount of yards, goes out of the lineup with an ankle tweak for 2 weeks. He's just out. If Drew Lock goes in there, throws 5 touchdowns in one of those games, it's done. Again, Daniel Jones's leash is very short this season. So to finally answer your question in totality, is Daniel Jones going to be the starter in week 1? Yes, but with the shortest leash possible. Everything the New York Giants did this offseason was for Daniel Jones in the quarterback room to have more help. Every other move that they made was in search of a new quarterback. So they added the talent around him. They were looking at his replacements. If he doesn't perform well, he is done. His leash has been made clear. It is very, very short, and the New York Giants are not going to wait any longer for Daniel Jones to develop into a good quarterback. It is year 6. It's put up or shut up time, as I've said multiple times on the show. This year, if he has those bad performances, they're going to pull him from the lineup. They're going to give Drew Lock a chance to play and compete. And if he goes out there and starts winning games, that's all she wrote for Daniel Jones. That's my ultimate take here, Alex. I think that if he misses any time with injuries, if he has one bad performance, whatever, the leash is very short for Daniel Jones. He will be the starter, but for how long is the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what probably will happen. I think that here's another thing. If he gets hurt and it's not season ending, I think they shut him down for the season. I think that if he twists his ankle, if he hurts his knee, if he hurts his elbow, he's done. Like, they will let him go because, like, an injury is probable, but a season-ending injury is less probable. So I think they probably let him go until he suffers some sort of injury. And if he goes down, like, all right, like, it's going to take him a couple weeks to recover, we probably will never see Daniel Jones play for the Giants again. Why? Because if he gets hurt and he fails, it doesn't even have to be a season-ending injury, by the way, guys. If he gets hurt in week 17 and he fails his end-of-season physical, that's all she wrote. We owe him the entire cap hit for 2025. And that's where I want to kind of dive into the contract portion of this. So the people that really like Daniel Jones, they want to give him a chance. They want to give him the WR1, want to give him the offensive line. I can respect your opinion there. Like, I get it. We have not given him any support, really minimal favors throughout his tenure with the Giants. But it's no longer about what we need to give him. It's about, is he the future, and what are his financial implications? What are the complications of his contract? Because Daniel Jones is probably never going to be a top 10 quarterback. Coming off an ACL tear, the team still needs, we have holes across the roster still. We have to develop some other positions. We don't have a really great secondary. We have a rookie new safety. We have a second-year CB1. We have holes in this roster, guys. It's objectively true. Speaking of those holes, we have to use free agency to fill them. And Daniel Jones can open up enough money for us to solve those problems. So let's take a look at his contract for a second. Daniel Jones this upcoming season has a $47.8 million cap hit. It counts for nearly 19% of their salary cap. 19%. That's a stupendous amount. you look at what his contract looks like next year. If he gets hurt and he fails his end of the season physical, they owe him all $41.6 million against the cap. And that guaranteed money that, otherwise you could take the out and remove from your implications in the future, it's stuck. You have to pay it. Now you're locked in at 15.22% of the salary cap next season, which is still a substantial amount. Not to mention in 2026, he has a $58.6 million cap hit that accounts 20% of the league cap. You just can't. I mean, guys, you could extend Daniel Jones and reduce that cap hit, but are we really talking about extending Daniel Jones right now? That would be the most. I don't even think I could watch this team anymore unless he was balling out at a level that was unprecedented and came out of nowhere. I don't think I could watch this team anymore. Extend if they decide to extend him. Everything that they've done, the interest in Drake May, the palpable interest in Drake May, they refusing to renegotiate his contract or rather just push the cap hits in the future. The obvious, now we're getting takes from Daniel Jeremiah, who's one of the most plugged in guys there is in the NFL, is now saying that there's going to be an open competition between Drew Lock and Daniel Jones. Everything that they're doing suggests that DJ is gone after this season. Everything. Right? Even if he has a subpar, even if he has a par campaign, it's okay. He throws for 20 touchdowns, which he's only done once in his career. He has 5 interceptions and he has 3,500 yards. That's it's an okay season. That is not even close to enough to convince me that he's the future of this team. The fact that some people actually, want to see him in the future, if the Giants take the out in his contract after this upcoming season, they will save a minimum of $19 million to allocate in free agency in 2025 and a maximum of $30 million if they spread out the cap hit over the final 2 years of the deal. So a maximum of $30 million, a minimum of $19 million. Anthony, let me ask you something. What could you buy for $20 million on the free agent market? Well, you could buy an elite cornerback. You could buy a really good wide receiver to pair with Malik Neighbors. You could buy a really good right tackle. You could buy, a really good cornerback. You could buy a CB1 to go with your CB1. You could get a superstar tight end. You could do anything, with that money. And you go out and you draft a quarterback or you acquire a quarterback one way or another. You have a substantial amount of money to now add a substantial piece to your team, like an elite player to your team for a couple of seasons. So, how important is it to you that the Giants have this additional financial flexibility? And do you think they're going to compromise that by, if he gets hurt and let's say it's not season ending, if he just gets hurt, he twists his ankle, he's out for 4 weeks. Do you think we see the Giants, start him at quarterback again? Or do you think they cut their losses then and they're like, we just can't risk it because that financial, flexibility and freedom is super important to continuing to build out this roster?
No, I mean, we've been saying it all offseason long. The injury clause, the guarantees in his contract for this upcoming season, if he fails that physical, those are going to weigh. That whole situation is going to weigh over the Giants' head the entire season. If Daniel Jones has any type of injury, I think he gets pulled from the lineup and he's ultimately done. The New York Giants can't afford to pay him the totality of that contract going forward. They need to create some financial flexibility. Alex, what was my word for the offseason last year for the New York Giants? Remember the word that I used to describe their offseason, the overarching theme? It was flexibility. The Darren Waller contract, flexible. The Daniel Jones contract, flexible. What they did with Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag, flexible. Every move that they made screamed flexibility. Financial freedom is what the New York Giants were working to achieve. They absolutely handicapped themselves and they hurt themselves in their mission towards that goal with the Daniel Jones contract. But thankfully, the Daniel Jones contract was flexible. The New York Giants basically signed him to a 2-year deal, not a 4-year deal. He is going into the final year of his contract, and now he has to go prove it. They didn't move the money around to make it a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal. Yes, it was a 4-year contract, but it really only had 2 guaranteed seasons in it. This is the second season of those guarantees. After this year, if he doesn't play well, he is gone. It's a 2-year contract with a team option for 2 additional years. That's how the New York Giants were looking at it. That's how all fans should be looking at it. If Daniel Jones doesn't perform well this year, it's over. And I agree with you that if he gets hurt at any point this season, and honestly, you can almost bet on that. Just look at his career. He's been injured every single season except for 2022. He's likely to miss at least some portion of games, whether it be 1 to 5 to season ending. He's going to miss some time with an injury. And you know what? Injuries can be so freaky. What happened to Daniel Jones when he tore his ACL? He took a drop back and it just snapped on him. Something like that could happen, and then the Giants are just dunzo, screwed over in their financial situation with the salary cap that they're going to have on Daniel Jones the following year. Look at what the Denver Broncos just did with Russell Wilson. The Broncos were a playoff fringe team. They absolutely could have been in the postseason this year if they kept Russell Wilson in the starting lineup and continued to play at a high level. Russell Wilson was playing fine football. The Denver Broncos benched him anyway because they didn't want to be on the hook for an injury clause in his contract and owe him a ton more guaranteed money in the future. So what did they do? They cut him, took on a humongous dead cap hit, but created a ton of financial flexibility for their future. The Giants are likely to do the same thing. If Daniel Jones is even playing average and the Giants are not in the playoff hunt, expect them to pull him from the lineup in order to prevent him from triggering that injury clause in his contract. It is a huge thing that's going to be weighing over the Giants this entire season. And again, it's why his leash is so short. It's not only short because he hasn't played well in recent years, because the Giants need to win more games for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen to keep their job. It's short because of the money. It's short because of his injury history and how that affects their money. The Giants need to keep the financial flexibility and freedom for their future. The only way to do that, make sure that Daniel Jones doesn't get hurt. Make sure that he doesn't actually screw them over financially with that injury clause. But really, the only way that you can ensure he doesn't get hurt, it's not by putting a better offensive line in front of him. It's not by getting guys open quicker. It's not by moving him out of the pocket. It's by taking him off of the field because freak injuries happen. He got injured on a normal drop back. That can happen again. There is no telling when a player is going to get injured, tear their ACL, Achilles pops on a routine tackle like it did for Aaron Rodgers. He got sacked on the 4th play of the season. Boom, Achilles gone. You never know what's going to happen, and you always have to keep in mind that injuries are just a part of the game. So Daniel Jones, if he's not putting up beastly numbers this season, even if he's playing good football, but he's not putting up stellar numbers the same way Russell Wilson does, he's probably going to get benched for the year anyway. And Giants fans are going to hate that. They're going to complain. A lot of the Daniel Jones believers and truthers are going to rip this team to shreds. But because of that injury clause and that guarantee in his contract, even if he's playing good football, he likely will be benched. He has to be playing great football, excellent football, elite football. He has to be maximizing Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers needs to be going for 1,500 yards. You got to see this offensive line putting up great numbers week to week. You got to see Daniel Jones pushing for 40 touchdowns, maybe at least 30. He has to be putting up excellent numbers. Otherwise, the injury clause in his guarantee will push the Giants to bench him, even if he's playing good football. So it's a huge talking point. It's a huge thing that New York Giants fans need to keep in mind, that it's not good enough for Daniel Jones this year just to be good enough. You have to be great. And if you're not great, that injury clause, it's going to put you on the bench. You are going to get benched this season if you are not a great quarterback for the New York Giants. So Daniel Jones is under more pressure than ever. He has to play well. His leash is super short. And like I said, it's not good enough to just be good enough anymore. Daniel Jones needs to be great this season. Otherwise, he will be benched.
Yeah, I mean, we could rehash that. It's just like, I mean, I could sit here all day and justify reasons why DJ, they're going to move on from him. I mean, I know a lot of people will continue to argue, and a lot of people will continue to say the same thing. Like, we haven't given him this, we haven't given him that. How about we give a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract who has no bad injuries and no bad habits? Why don't we give him those weapons? You know what I mean? Like, why does it have to be Daniel Jones that we give these things to? Why can't it be a young player with all the upside in the world? It could be in next year's draft. We'll see what happens. Look, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know there's going to be a quarterback next year that's worthwhile taking, but there's always risers. There's always guys that emerge who I'm sure the Giants will be watching. But, you know, at this point in time, like, I don't see why, like, the Giants should be handing DJ the starting job, right? I don't see why Drew Lock shouldn't have a chance to win that job. Giving Daniel Jones the starting job coming off the ACL tear, having, you know, really had only one good season at over 5 years of sample size. Like, is that where we're at? Like, one good year and that's it? And now he can't really run the same because of the ACL tear. I'm sure he won't be leaning on that portion of his game to compensate. So he's going to have to read the field. Look, this is the truth, guys. Like, Daniel Jones, this is going to be the biggest eye opener for us. Why? Because he's not going to, the team is not going to let him run the same way he usually does. So he's going to have to read the whole field. He's going to have to go through his progressions. He's going to have to find the open receivers. He's going to have to play quarterback at a high level without leaning on his legs to pick up the slack. And then we're really going to see, can he do it? Can he get to his third progression? Can he get to his second progression? Is it always going to be a first read stare down? Is it going to be, trying to escape and pick up yards? Is it going to be only a deep shot? He has to be a well-rounded quarterback in the pocket. If we give him a pocket and he excels and he reads the field and he can process things quickly, it'll be the first time we've ever seen it. But all the luck to him, man. I mean, crap. Like, all we want is good quarterback play here. We have 5 years of reason to suggest why it won't happen. But hell, man, like, I've seen crazier things happen, I guess. I'm rooting for the guy to prove me wrong. I want him to prove me wrong. But I also acknowledge the fact that the likelihood of it happening is very low. And I don't see why the Giants don't. Just same thing with Evan Neal. Same thing with Evan Neal and Jermaine Illuminor. Why can't Drew Lock compete with Daniel Jones? I mean, like, what are we really talking about here? One of them, Drew Lock is not very good, and neither is Daniel Jones. So you might as well let the best man win. I do agree, though, that he probably will start the season no matter what. And I do think that the leash will be short, especially if he gets hurt. So we'll see how things progress, but definitely interested to get your guys' thoughts on this. I know a lot of people will probably be very split on it. I think most people kind of agree, like, let the best man win, like, screw it at this point. Like, we're not winning a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones, but, it's going to be, interesting situation to find ourselves in a week after the draft, having the same conversation we've been having for 3 years straight. It's kind of sucks, but, I guess this is where we are.
It's Drew Lock season, boys. No, maybe it is, though. Maybe it isn't. We'll see how things go throughout the regular season. Again, the pressure is on Daniel Jones. It's not good enough to be good enough anymore. He's got to be great. And if he's not, Drew Lock likely will see some playing time during the season. It's a very good thing that the New York Giants actually signed a backup quarterback with some starting experience and some upside this offseason. That was a huge decision, a great move for them. Hopefully, Drew Lock can be a solid quarterback for the Giants if he does receive playing time this upcoming season. But hey, at the end of the day, I am rooting for the New York Giants, so therefore I am rooting for Daniel Jones. I'm hoping and praying that Daniel Jones throws 50 touchdowns this year. Giants win the Super Bowl. He fiends off all of the haters, and Drew Lock never sees a field. Ultimately, if I'm projecting it, though, and I'm being unbiased, I think there's a really good chance that we see Drew Lock this upcoming season. But it's going to be an interesting one. And, of course, throughout the rest of this offseason and all through the regular season, we'll be talking Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Malik Neighbors, everything about the New York Giants right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.